The comments, opinions, and views shared during this program are of those individual Freemasons and do not reflect the official position of a Grand Lodge, concordant body, appendant body, Masonic authority, or craftsmanonline.com.
Hey, welcome back to the Craftsman Online Podcast, the only Masonic podcast endorsed by the Grand Lodge of New York. I'm your host, Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. We are taking you to school this summer. Yeah, we've teamed up with the Grand Lodge of New York and Arizona State University to promote their cool course called What the Founders Meant by Happiness. It's a journey through virtue and character. Cool thing is, it's absolutely free. Yeah, my favorite F word too. It's self-paced. So you could jump in now and do the whole course. I mean, if you're a crazy person, like in a day, or go week by week. It's free. Did I mention the free part? And at the very end of it, you can get a cool little certificate. Now, here's the fun part about this with Arizona State University. It's open to anybody. So yeah, dads, you can take this with your kids and kind of learn something cool about America, Freemasonry, our founding fathers throughout the summertime. Teachers, you can bring this to class to start school off in September. You can get all the information and, of course, the link to start taking the course by visiting us online at craftsmanonline.com. Well, staying on that school theme, I feel like every time I talk with this guy, I get smarter, and he's taking us to school as we go way back. Yeah, a Stoics approach to divesting our vices. Today, we're going to catch up with our brother Franklin Rings on a discussion on philosophy and Masonic practice. Welcome back to the Craftsman Online Podcast, Brother Franklin.
It's a pleasure to be here always.
He claps.
I was pressing my knuckle, but yeah.
The one clap.
That too. Someone's got to clap, right? No, but seriously, thank you for having me.
I knew that if we were going to talk about Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism and Freemasonry, the question is based off of this, where Marcus Aurelius wrote in one of our versions of the book, "What is a vice? Nothing you haven't often seen before." He also implies that vices are what challenge the independence of our minds, that they are part of the fabric of life, and we must overcome or deal with them. So as a Stoic with a huge background on Marcus Aurelius and some of the other great thinkers, what comes to mind? What's your answer to that question?
Man, I mean, the first thing off the top of my mind is work hard. I mean, everyone has vices. It's part of the human condition, and I think that's why we all end up being captured by them in some capacity, both as a Stoic, as a brother, and just as a human being in general. So it's all about using the tools you have, whether as a Mason or not, to start to chip away at some of those corners, you know?
When you identify a vice, so you look at a vice as a negative thing, as like, I always think of Miami Vice, for example, and the vice cops of like, you know, drugs, alcohol, sex, women, all those crazy things. Like those immediately start coming to my mind. Some brothers will say, you know, actually sometimes good things can become a vice, like Freemasonry, for example.
Big time. They say the only difference between a poison and a pleasure is how much you're using. You know, too much water, you drown. Not enough water, you die. So
listen to this already, so deep, so early. This is awesome. But what I mean by Freemasonry can be advice is exactly what you're talking about. Like there are some guys that spend too much time in lodge.
Oh, yeah, sure.
At the expense of family and friends and other social connections, that Freemasonry is like their thing, which isn't a bad thing. It's just, as you said, too much water, you drown.
Well, you can kind of think about the pillars too. I mean, I've read in a couple different esoteric texts, not related to Stoicism, about how the two pillars we stand between as Freemasons, you know, that can be representing one extreme and another extreme, too much or too little. And a lot of people between vice and virtue is really in the middle here, but it's just two different kinds of extremes in the vice. And we're usually bouncing back and forth between the two pillars when we really just need to be in the middle to find that virtue, you know?
Feels like it was yesterday. I just did an episode with Brother Cedric Jacobson on the point within a circle and some of the symbolism and the deeper parts of the Holy Saints John and saints and solstices. And we talked about, you know, the planets and the alignment and all of these really cool things. But to your point that, yes, you know, why do we use that? Why is it such a powerful symbol in Freemasonry? And then across all time. And I like the way that you put it is that, yes, it can signify the beginning and the end of something or the continuation or the boundaries of it. But also to that thing is that where should you be? You can't draw a perfect circle using a compass without leaving a point somewhere. And that was really kind of the big point that he left with me. So when you said that, I was like, whoa, bro. Like,
yeah, I mean, there's an image in my mind when I think about the point within a circle, which is exactly that. Like there's the point, there's the circle, and then there's the two lines that go down the perimeters of the circle. And if you just remove the circle, I mean, that's exactly what I'm talking
but back to Marcus Aurelius, not a Freemason.
about. I wish.
Yeah, that would have been nice. So when you hear he describes a vice as nothing you haven't often seen before, when you look at a vice and kind of, the goal that every Mason has, which is trying to be that change inside of themselves, when we talk about the approach of the rough ashlar to the perfect ashlar, where do vices fall in that journey?
Yeah, I mean, so divesting, if you put it that way, it's a process, right? You don't divest and then you're done. Boom, you have a smooth ashlar. I feel like it's a process. And I think that's something we got to keep in mind in that regard, right? Like, it's nothing you haven't seen before because everyone's got them. Everyone's got some sort of poison in their life they're trying to rid themselves of. And, it borderline takes a saint, it takes a saint or a sage in order to be able to find someone who has no vice. I mean, it's borderline superhuman. So like I was alluding to earlier, I think it's a process. And I think Marcus knew that. It's a process. It's a lifelong growth.
The words of a very wise personal trainer that I used to work with, when he would talk to clients about weight loss, and they're like, well, how come I've been going to the gym for 2 weeks? How come I haven't seen any results yet? And he's like, think about how long it took you to get to the point where you are now. It's going to take this long to get back to where you want to be.
Yes. So true. I mean, there's that quote. Was it Michelangelo who said, I saw the angel in the marble and I sculpted until I set him free. I'm on that quest myself, and that's one where you got to continuously look at yourself. You got to be honest too, which Aurelius is even known for that early on in his life. He's known as the honest one.
It's interesting too, because a vice, we talked a little bit about the physical part of our bodies, right? And we're all, I don't want to say consumed or concerned, but we all have an outlook on our outwardly appearance, right? We want to be always looking good. But vices are the one unique thing that can affect both internal and external self. And we often think of them as external distractions, but it's also, as part of to what you're saying, it's a lot of retraining routines, processes, habits that we've formed over the years. And I feel like this is where, as Freemasons, we get these unique things called working tools, which when we actually put them to work for us, they are a tool that can help alleviate some of this work, like the common gavel or maybe the compasses. How do you find these working tools that we have help our brother reclaim this independence from a vice?
These vices, you can see them in the body, but you can't necessarily see them. They're like I don't want to say they're an esoteric thing, but they're a conceptual thing that you see done throughout life, but it's not a thing specifically. And I think that's kind of how our working tools are. Like, it's kind of the tool to work on something you also can't see with these metaphorical, symbolic tools, right? So again, I think about, going back to, if this quote is by Michelangelo, carving until the angel set free, what are you going to use for that? You're going to use maybe a chisel, maybe a gavel, maybe the two together to try and chisel and push some of these extraneous pieces of yourself out. But yeah, no, I think the tools are absolutely necessary.
So I was reading from my version of Marcus Aurelius Meditations. I have the annotated edition that was written by Robin Waterfield. It's broken out by notebooks, as I mentioned, so I'm in notebook 7.
Mm-hmm.
Franklin has a different version where his is book 7, and he's actually got cool illustrations in his book. I might have to go get that one too.
I do have cool.
A little bit deeper into that notebook, Marcus Aurelius advises that we live under the common idea or law that there is one truth which connects us, and that we should love mankind and follow God's lead. And as a Freemason, that also hits, because I'm thinking of all the charges that we hear throughout our degrees, and that reminder, we don't necessarily talk about God, although we do mention, before any great or important undertaking, what are we supposed to do? We refer to holding in veneration the supreme architect of the universe with the letter G. We're also told a lot about how to treat fellow brothers, but also members of the human family, which is my favorite way of talking about people. You talked about the two pillars, so I kind of want to steer us back over there. How do following the creators, the supreme architect's lead, and also on the other pillar, having that love for human or mankind, how does that help a Mason identify which superfluities we need to remove from us?
Man, you're spurring a lot of quotes in my mind. Pushed by drives and pulled by values, or something like that. I'm sure the listener can probably look it up. It's something synonymous with that. Like, I think if you have those two positive, undoubtedly positive forces in your world, you have the material, you have your brothers, your family, your civilization, your culture. If they want the best for you, don't want the best for you, you should hopefully want the best for yourself and for them regardless. And then you have God, whatever you believe in, pulling you towards virtue, which is what a lot of these Stoics would believe, the logos or whatever they believed in at the time, set virtue into play, and you want to follow that. So you're kind of pushed by your community in one direction. You can think about that as one pillar, and then pulled by deity, and that's the other.
It's also kind of interesting to me as a Freemason to examine that and go, okay, here is a guy who's writing this. When did Marcus Aurelius live? Was it like 2nd century or?
Yeah, I think it was like the 100s, I'm pretty sure. Like, he just missed Christ. We're almost at 2,000 years.
Wow.
Of meditations influencing the world. It's crazy.
You're thinking about like lifespan, how people were educated on things back then. What culture and society and self and individual really meant back then, and how it's changed so much now. But I think the thing that's amazing to me is that he says, hold yourself. It goes a lot to our Masonic ideas as well, which is hold yourself in regard to something higher than you, be accountable to something bigger than you, and think of other people first before you think of yourself. And these are all, to kind of quote where you're going, like all of other modern philosophies have sprung from this, like the golden rule and how we all wish to be treated, right? Is that doing something good and kind isn't looked as a way to put a coin or an investment into a bank. You're doing it because it's the right thing to do, not for any sort of value or reward.
Marcus Aurelius, I think it's in book 2, book 3, notebook 2, notebook 3. It's somewhere early on in the book. He talks about how human beings are made to be together and to work together, like rows of teeth. You know, they're meant to work together, or like hands and feet. We're made for each other to coordinate together. And so, like, if you do kindness, I personally believe it's going to come back to you, but also, like, the jaws got to work together. And I don't think one jaw wants to be mean and abrasive to the other jaw, or else things are not going to work out well for the whole organism. And I mean, the Stoics really believed in the logos. Most of them did, or at least some of them. And the logos really believed that we were like one big organism living and working together. And so if you're doing something evil, like you're going against the nature of humanity, and you're going against the nature of logos, and you're really like causing chaos, you know, because we're meant to be together, to work together.
Into meditations, Marcus Aurelius talks a lot about vices as external distractions, and that we have the power to overcome them, as we talked about. But it's that mindset that you have to hold of loving your fellow man and finding joy in doing good for good's sake. So when it comes to what superfluities do I need to start removing from my life, as someone who has done that very uncomfortable personal inventory, most of us do it at the end of the year as we get ready for a New Year's tradition. But some of us are kind of keenly aware of people going like, dude, why do you have to be such an asshole? You know, like that's usually a dead giveaway. But when you realize that certain actions or behaviors that you have tend to have the same outcome with people, then you need to take a step back and go, it's not people that's the problem here. It's me that's the problem here. So what are the things that I can do to start changing these outcomes so that they're more productive for everybody? And I think that having those two pillars as a Freemason of being accountable to something bigger than me and doing things out of the love for others, now I can start to look at those things that I'm doing that aren't just necessarily hurting me, but preventing me from having those optimal relationships with other people. And those are the superfluities. Those are the waste of times. Those are the vices that are taking away from me being able to be the best version of myself.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I don't recall if it was Marcus or another Stoic, but they talk about how you don't want to do anything that you wouldn't want the public to see. You don't want to do anything that you would want to need to hide, even if you can hide it and there's absolutely no way anyone's going to find out. You don't want to do that. And I've always kind of translated that into my own life, thinking about God in that regard. Like, obviously, he knows completely what's going on, but also, like, it only takes one person looking through your window, physically or metaphorically, in order to see something one time in order to, slip up and feel that shame. But if you just do the right thing, and only you know what the right thing is in your mind, in your heart, the whole 9 yards, in your soul, that's really all you need to do. And there's some there's a couple figures I can bring up and talk about that aren't Stoics. You could maybe say they're like kind of lowercase s Stoics, but they even kind of talk about some of this, like follow your soul, be reaching towards that greater good that you know is there, like that idealized version of yourself, and at least move and start aiming towards it. Because you're probably not going to get there, but if you're moving towards it, you're going to be moving farther away from the opposite that's happening.
We were talking about working tools, and the square and compasses always give great explanation. It's one of my favorite working tools, and they start explaining how they work together, about setting boundaries and working with other people. How do you look at these as tools that help a Mason live without turmoil? That's a great Stoic statement right there.
Well, I think turmoil, you're going to have to face it at some point. It's how are you going to face it, though? And that's really a huge part of Stoicism, And I want to get back to the working tools, but Stoicism is really about, like, you're going to encounter these problems. How are you going to deal with the problems, though? Are you going to be super emotional and not have any discipline, and then you're going to end up spreading it even further? But I think, personally, I always think about the compasses in this regard, like circumscribe your desires, keep them in due bounds with all mankind, I mean, you got to stay within that circle. You got to know how large your circle is. You got to know, when am I doing too much? When am I doing too little? Which is kind of, if you think about it, when it comes to the circumference, almost the same thing. There's too much and too little, and they're both on that perimeter. You don't want to do either of them. It's actually kind of an inverse of the pillar in many ways, but does the same thing. But yeah, I mean, the compasses are huge. The square, I mean, you got to square your actions. If you're not having square actions, it's the same thing with that. How private of a life are you living, If someone watched you with unsquared actions, would you feel shame? And if you feel shame, I think that's a sure indicator, that you probably have more opportunities than you might think to show and give virtue.
I remember the point, and you're going to help me connect it here, in that when you think of the working tools, especially the square, I always feel the square, man, it just gets a bum rap. What's a square? It's a square. Like, that's basically, it's a square. Oh, okay.
One sentence.
But I think when you look at the square, and that's the thing, like you visit a Masonic lodge, you see them open up, their volume of sacred law, and you see what are the working tools that you're using. I've seen some that have giant squares, like, something that you could teach a classroom with. And I've seen others that are really small. And I think what the square does is it helps you understand what your boundary, how to set your compass size. So this is how I'm going to square my actions, so that I know I'm not walking into a situation that is too big for me, that is going to be too challenging for me, so that you can look at the square to put yourself in the best position to succeed instead of struggling and then failing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. The way I think about it, I think about the relation to literal masonry, like you're using that square to make sure those stones are square. They got the straight edges. They're better fit for the builder's use, And I mean, we're always trying to become that not rough ashlar. And you can't use the rough ashlar with a square, you know? I mean, if you do, you're going to be able to see all those imperfections and all those intricacies you got to get out. And I mean, you can use it. You can't really use the compasses with the rough ashlar, you know, or the perfect ashlar. You can't use it to be able to tell exactly. You need the square. So, I mean, what an allegory for, you know, our bodies being these rough ashlars, ever moving closer to perfect. You need the square for that. And I would really relate the square, as far as Stoics go, to justice. Like, does it measure up against the virtue of justice? And they say justice is the virtue from which all the other virtues spring out of, you know?
I had to jot down repeatable success. I think that's the other thing that the square sets you up for, is that if you look at yourself as a factory and you're like, hey, I need to make perfect bricks, and bricks are moments or experiences in life, right? You're not trying to make perfect experiences every time. You're trying to set yourself up with a template so that everything is uniformed and there's a repeatable success pattern here. For example, think of a wall as like your day, your month, as a term of measurement. Now you're stacking all of these things up, even your life. You're trying to remove those moments where you were not measured and not planning and thinking and being present. That's another thing that Marcus Aurelius talks a lot about, is being present in the moment.
100%. I mean, if you're not present, how are you able to even evaluate these things, you know? If you're constantly in the future, or you're stuck in the past, or having too much anxiety about the future, being too depressed about the past, again, all these extremes, you're probably not present. And you're probably not investigating, like, you know, we talk a lot about the vices and about like our negatives, but what did I succeed in today? What did I succeed in not doing today? And I think it's Epictetus, if I'm not mistaken, who Marcus Aurelius read. I think Epictetus was not too long before Marcus either. But he said, actually, I don't know if this was Epictetus or Seneca. It was one of the Holy Trinity of Stoics, of course. He said, what work have I done today? I've learned to become a better friend to myself. And like, I think that was Seneca actually, but like so profound, like such a small thing that most of us don't think about, but probably should be doing more often. You know, they do this, they did a study, and this is something like kind of off topic, but they did a study and they found that like pet owners are far more inclined to give their pets medication on schedule than themselves. And it goes to show you, like, we end up, I wouldn't like, ego can be a problem, but we end up like diluting how kind we should be to ourselves, especially in relation to other people. So, I mean, Seneca's, again, I think it's Seneca. Seneca's perfect for that, you know? Be present. I know there's some things I could fix in terms of my vices and some of my missteps today, but also, what did I succeed in doing or not doing that I should not have done?
Being present is really, at that moment, if your life is a video game, you've got both hands on the controller and you are locked in, dude.
Yeah, big time.
That's what being present means.
If someone were to say that to me, I wouldn't laugh, but I would say, like, let's be present here together for 1 minute and let's see how it goes. Like, it's so hard to be present. One of my brothers, before he became a brother in our fraternity, and I would talk all the time throughout the pandemic when we'd have these like philosophical conversations about how much throughout the day do you think the average person is truly present and reflecting? And we both kind of came to the conclusion that most people are probably only present one time during the day, especially in the middle. But like, most people are only present when their head hits the pillow at night and you have all those thoughts that come back to you where you reflect on your day. Just try to have multiples of those. I got to say about being present, though, and one of my vices, if I'm pushed some responsibility from someone else that I know, especially they have the capacity to do, I feel this urge and this push in myself to say that same no. But it almost feels like, I don't know, it's just something I'm trying to chisel on my own rough ashlar, right? In meditations, when he was going to become emperor, he dreamt he had ivory shoulders, meaning he was strong enough. He had the resilience that he could take that mantle of responsibility upon himself and be okay. And I kind of think that's what, like, when we're given responsibilities, you're being called upon to say, do you have the shoulders? Like, can you carry this responsibility? And there can be too much responsibility, of course. I mean, undoubtedly. But you can always get better at carrying the responsibility.
We talked about how, I had made the comment, well, hey, when you talk about vices, sometimes Freemasonry can be a vice. And I think it can.
It can be, definitely. I'm sure there's many ways for it to be a vice, of course.
Oh, absolutely. But here's why I think, well, at least for me, why Freemasonry becomes a vice is because there's meaning in Freemasonry for me. Like, me going to lodge isn't an exercise in having to attend lodge because I feel like I have to be there because of some obligation or guilt that I have. No, that's not the case. That's not it at all. I have to go to work every day because I need this thing called a paycheck so I can support my way of life and my family. That's why I go to work every day. Do I get meaning out of my work? Sometimes, not every day. Sometimes I really have to, as you talk about, like, reflect and think about, like, oh yeah, that moment that I had at work today, that experience, that has meaning. That's going to help me become a better character. But very rarely, man. Where does the real meaning happen for me? In the relationships and the interactions that I have with my lodge brothers. And I'm not saying this as like a pitch to go join a lodge or become a Freemason, because it's really hard to explain when you talk about join Freemasonry where meaning has value. But it does. Like, one, you feel like you belong to something. Moving back to Albany from the capital, the DC capital area, for example, when I would call brothers and say, hey, I'm moving back to Albany, like, oh, man, we can't wait to have you come back here. This is going to be so exciting. Regular friends and family that, some of my family got excited, but like regular friends were like, oh, that's cool. Well, hey, we'll have to hang out when you move back, man. It wasn't like, oh, when are you coming back? Are you going to be back in time for this? Because we could go to this or we could do that. Like, instantly getting booked for things like that. And that was the meaning that I missed were those connections. The other meaning is like, I never sit there and go, oh man, well, sometimes on really long degree nights, but I never sit there and go, oh man, I am just sitting here in lodge and like, what is the purpose of this? Like, I always look forward to going to lodge meetings, even if I have no real role that night. Just being there is so much more meaningful to me than the alternative, which is, I love sitting at home and playing video games, but that's just a time waster, to be honest with you. I'm not getting better at anything in life by doing that.
I gotta say, shameless plug, shout out Mount Vernon Lodge number 3 up here in Albany, New York. I mean, everything we do is meaningful together. Like, we're always having good conversations. There's a particular brother, I don't know if I want to say his name or not, but him and I actually had, I think it was last year or the year before, we sat down over the course of the Masonic year outside of lodge. We met in lodge. And we would get together and we were talking, each of us, about one vice we were working on for the year. And we were keeping each other in check. Like, be like, how did you do this? Or since I last saw you in the past 2 weeks or whatever. It was amazing. Like, I have friends that I can kind of have that conversation with, but they won't necessarily keep me in check. You know, you're kind of just part of the same community and there's almost like a social accountability, right? But with this brother, I mean, hey, you told me you were doing this 2 weeks ago. Like, did you keep up on it? And then what else did you do? And I've had conversations like that with many brothers from other lodges, but like Mount Vernon, I've had that a multitude of times with people. So, I mean, there's nothing like it in the fraternity like that. I agree.
And then here's the weird thing. This is a guy that you've probably known not even a thumbnail amount of time as some of the other friends that you grew up with. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
exactly.
The amount of time that you spend with this brother every month is really just a handful of hours. You spend more time with people that you work with or, people at your dojo or at your gym, right?
Yep.
But here you are feeling like I need to be accountable to this person because I respect them and they respect me. And I don't want to let them down because in a way I'd be letting myself down.
Exactly. It's a meaningful interaction. And I mean, you can certainly artificially thrust meaning into more situations in your life, but there's something about interacting with a brother like that. I guess I could shout out Angel for this too. I mean, Angel's helped me a lot in that regard. And I'm sure there's many brothers out there that keep everyone in check. No doubt.
Just thinking about the things that we were talking about tonight, and it's tough. I'm not going to discount this. Like, we can say it and it's like, oh, you're just saying a phrase, but we live in some really freaking crazy times right now, dude. Like, I couldn't even tell you what is going to be the news story a week from now, much less a month before. I was even thinking about this, like, what are we going to be talking about the end of this year? Like, who knows? I think it's the question that people will look at us and say, okay, well, great. You read these books that are 2,000 years old from, really smart dead guys. Like, how are you taking all this ancient wisdom and how are you using this to be better in a world that you walk outside and it's immediately giving you the double birds as soon as you didn't even get a chance to get out your front door of your house?
If you give me a moment, I think I have to pull up to the chapter you and I were actually talking about right in the beginning. This is out of book 2, notebook 2, whatever, out of Meditations. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and I've recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own, not of the same blood or birth, but the same mind, and possessing a share of the divine. And so none of them can hurt me. And that's like half of the paragraph. There's a lot more to it. Just remind yourself every day, no one's perfect. Marcus Aurelius lived in some incredibly tumultuous times. He died from a plague, not too different, I presume, from the virus that we got through. He saw wars. Like, his predecessor lived in some of the most peaceful times in Rome, to my understanding. And Marcus lived and ruled through some of the most tumultuous parts of it. So you just got to wake up and realize the world's not perfect. We're not waking up in Plato's cave, Plato's world, Plato's republic, none of that. And you just got to do your best. Reflect on virtue, reflect on the divine, and just do your best to be better than who you were yesterday.
As soon as you started reading that, I'm like, oh, I don't have it in this one because, as I told you when we got started, I lent out my original version of Meditations and somebody never got it back. So they probably saw, whenever I read a book, it's highlighted. I have notes written all over the place. And that was one of the phrases that really got to me.
It's so good.
Oh, dude, when you think about it, it's like, yeah, every day I'm going to run into people who their mission, what they think a win is for them is just to make sure that I'm not having a good one today. And I'm going to understand that in a way. I'm going to kind of give a little respect. Like, okay, I get it. I see where you're kind of coming from.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to buy into that temptation. Like, I'm going to be better than this. I'm not going to let somebody else's actions influence me.
Big time. I mean, and are those people being present? Are they being conscious of the good and evil paradigms, those two pillars that they're between, We have the opportunity as Freemasons to use these tools,
right?
Really just use virtue to be more present and to, in moments like that, do what we know is right. So I'm right there with you. I work on this every morning in traffic.
That's a good place to end this one. I love it. Brother Franklin Rings, thank you so much for your time on this edition of the Craftsman Online Podcast.
Thank you, Bro RC. It's a pleasure and honor as always.
Thanks again to my guest this week, Brother Franklin Rings. Dude, every time I talk to that guy, I feel so much smarter. I'm Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. It's one thing that I've often said where people can try to copy how we do our meetings. They can try to copy some of our events or programs, but they are never going to be able to copy our lodge culture. We'll be in a deeper discussion on lodge culture and how to make it special for your lodge with Worshipful Brother Bull Garlington and Scott Dayton next week. Until then, let peace and harmony prevail.